2 Samuel 7 and 1 Chronicles 17. We saw in Psalm 2 in our last reading that God had promised the nation of Israel to have a king sitting on its throne forever, and that king will someday rule all the nations of the world. So a tremendous promise. What we learn in our text today is the name of the first and really the last king of Israel, in the sense that he was promised in 2 Samuel 7 in our text today that his line would be the one that would sit on the throne forever. We notice first of all that it is, well, there is that idea of forever this is in Psalm 89:36. I will not lie to David, his seed shall endure forever. Well, what that means, of course, in the long term is not that Israel will always have a Davidic king. In fact, they will go into exile, of course, in 586. That exile will last, well, it actually is still going on. Israel does not have a king today. They will be a subject people from 586 BC onwards, even through the New Testament. So what that promise is that if Israel has a king, it will be, by God's choice, a Davidic person. But if they don't have a king, they don't have a king. So what's going to happen is someday, and this becomes part of our messianic expectation, that if a king is to arise over the nation by God's design, he will be of the line of David. Previously to this, we knew it would be of the tribe of Judah, but now we are getting specific. It's of the family of David. Another thing that is said is, and implied before this story, but certainly working through this promise moving forward, is the presumption that this king will be loyal to Yahweh. With that presumption of loyalty comes the presumption of the possibility of forfeiture of the kingdom. This verse is back in Exodus 34, verse 14, but it really fits now to again remind us of what God had said. You shall worship no other God, for the Lord your God is a jealous God, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land and play the harlot with their gods. That's always running in the background of our story. So that presumption of the possibility of forfeiture means that, yes, we have a promise of a Davidic king forever on the throne. However, understood presumption here, if that king is disloyal to Yahweh, he will be taken off the throne, or he will be not qualified to be the king of Israel, or of Judah. And that will happen in the future. We will have kings in our story that become disloyal to Yahweh. One last thing that is mentioned, and this is in 2 Samuel 7:14. Let me read it first and then describe it. It says this: If he, that is David and his kingly line, if he commits iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the blows of the sons of men, but my mercy shall not depart from him. The point being, yes, this king will sin. Who doesn't sin, right? But there's an interesting promise made here. If this king sins, and he doesn't exactly describe how, but it's in what I'd recommend in relation to a king who's loyal to Yahweh, as David is, but in that loyalty he sins, and let's put Bathsheba here because that's coming up quite soon. I think this is all part of the story here. If he sins, I will treat him with mercy. So here what's coming in this line, or this word, is a unpacking of what we had talked before about the promise of forgiveness. A person who's a loyalist in the Old Testament is considered righteous, and they have this presumption of a forgiveness that's always about their relationship to Yahweh. Yahweh is going to continually seek for a restoration of relationship with that person. Well, this is describing that in a very practical way. If he sins in such a way to not break loyalty, but if he sins, I will have mercy on him, and I like that line there. I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the blows of the sons of men, meaning a man class or a human class chastening. You'll sow what you reap, or the other way around. You'll reap what you sow. What that is really telling us, again, I think in a predictive way, is that a man like David may sin and sin badly, but God will work with him because he's a forgiven individual, yet he will suffer for his sins. He will sow, or he will reap the kinds of effects that his sins will sow. So that is a very interesting prediction of how practical this promise is for not just a man like David, but for all the kings to follow in the nation of Israel.